Okay, Sistas fans, now yet again we have reached a crossroad where I'm not standing alone on this because there are a lot of people who thankfully see my perspective on this, but this is a this is probably the biggest debate amongst Sistas fans I've had when compared to just the crap I dealt with Zatima season 3. But we're talking about the suspension of Dany without pay and the people who feel like Tony should be suspended because Dany was suspended. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. And I stated this during my live stream. I made a lengthy post on basically all my platforms as well. So we're going to get into it. Now, shout out to Pretty Brown Eyes on Twitter, because I actually retweeted her and left a whole freaking breakdown, which I'm going to talk about in this video. She says, "Thank you, Andy, for stating the obvious. If the bulk of the reason Dany was suspended was due to her relationship with Tony, why was she the only one punished? That's where the discrimination claim could come in." I think that is complete BS. And this is not me, this is nothing against the user who posted this. I'm saying in terms of the situation that was brought up in the episode when Dany's breaking it down to Andy. Now, first of all, thankfully she clarified, well, technically Tony didn't fire me. He just relayed the information from HR that she was let go without pay. And in the promo for next week, I know the fans who think that Tony ought to suffer consequences are lighting up, because at the law firm, you got Andy going, why is my client the only one suspended? Why not Tony Royal? And Tony's like, me? And folks, I make mistakes. I do. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. I think the most recent example of me being wrong, even when I said I was right, was the whole Zatima situation about Zach and Fatima with the phones, about Leslie getting a text, or Zach getting text from Leslie and Fatima getting a text from the funeral home. I was wrong or whatever. But in this situation, I double checked triple checked actually. And like I said, relay this to me if I'm wrong. But HR suspended Dany without, let's back it up. She was released from the leadership program, and Tony's like, hey, I'll keep you posted, but it seems there might be more consequences. And from there, she was suspended without pay. And here is where, if I'm wrong, the rest of my video and thoughts on this is invalid, but my impression was Dany knocking the coffee on her coworker was the reason for the suspension, not being in a relationship with the vice president of the air line. And like I said, if I am incorrect, then okay, yeah, everything I have to say after this is invalid. But her getting suspended was about the coffee. And like I said in my post, I said Dany was suspended because she dumped or knocked coffee on her coworker, not because of her relationship with Tony. Because the assault via the coffee was the reason of suspension without pay. Now, and I go back a couple episodes, because go back to when I'm just going to say HR, and obviously that's the woman who was conducting the meeting with Dany and Tony in his office. If you go back to that meeting, Tony was the person in the hot seat. He was being grilled about whether or not he showed favoritism by putting Dany in the leadership program after the deadline had already passed. Like I said, if I remember correctly, that meeting had nothing to do with Dany and all about whether or not Tony was showing favoritism to Dany due to their relationship. Okay? So what happened then? HR simply said, we're going to investigate this further, because Tony said no. Okay, he said no, which we know was a bold-faced lie. But in that moment, Dany had no consequences to face. It was all Tony. And basically, I think that whether or not HR determined that Tony showed favoritism, I think the worst outcome for Dany would have been what she wanted being removed from the leadership program. Okay, you follow me on this, right? Now we move forward to the coffee, and I said this since it happened. Leonard was way out of pocket for the way he was talking to Dany. It was inappropriate. It was unprofessional, questioning her integrity. However, instead of doing the more sensible thing and basically pulled a snitch on a snitch, run to HR the same way Leonard did, and talk about how this man is just being completely unprofessional and whatnot. He's like, smearing my reputation, talking about how I laid on my back to get that position, which is BS. So she was the one who took it too far, and instead of doing the sensible thing, knocked the coffee on him in front of all those people, co-workers, customers, and if I'm not mistaken, the HR rep and Tony were an eye view of this as well. So what I'm saying is that was the reason she got suspended. It had nothing to do with the relationship. It had nothing to do with that HR meeting. That was on Dany. And I think that even if the HR meeting did not happen, she would have still got suspended because of what she did. I mean, let's be real though. A lot of us are asking the question of, wait, why wasn't Dany suspended when she ran over Preston's two racist brothers with the luggage cart back in season 2? Plot. Because that is kind of funny when you think about it. Wait, so she's suspended for knocking coffee on a coworker, but she's not suspended when she runs down. Oh, that's kind of crazy when you think about it. Dany running those two guys down was foreshadowing of her running down Jonah in the parking lot after, he slapped her and spit on her. Damn. Okay, Tyler, I see you. But no, it's just crazy to think about because I took it back to an earlier season. I said, let's kind of reverse the roles here. Remember, this was like season 2 or 3. But basically, Calvin was heading to Florida to visit his father because remember, he has 2 dads. One of them passed and the other one, was retired. And I think Calvin gave a chunk of his money to his dad to go down, to Florida to retire. And that's why he moved in with Maurice because he was low on funds at the time. And he went to go check on him. And he confronted Dany at the airport because, Dany is very Dany was to Calvin what Maurice was to Sabrina. Somebody who would just constantly, just say a lot of mean and disrespectful things. So he confronted Dany about the constant disrespect she gives him due to his flamboyant nature. And even in the midst of him trying to have a serious conversation, she was still cracking jokes and disrespecting him. Just like Leonard was doing to her. Now, imagine in that moment if Calvin threw, I don't know, coffee or whatever drink on Dany at the counter in front of customers and workers. How do you think things would have unfolded? I mean, from probably charges being pressed against him, maybe even getting arrested, at the very least banned from the airline. And why? Because he stepped out of line instead of doing the more sensible thing, which is like maybe, when doing a customer survey or feedback on the airline service, basically writing a negative review about the way he was treated and talked to by one of their employees, and then Dany would have suffered consequences. But no, he didn't do that. So all I'm saying is Dany did what she did, and now she has to face the consequences. Because remember, in the following episode, episode 18, what happened at the beginning? She's cracking jokes. And Tony's like, Dany, do you not realize what you just did? You assaulted a coworker in front of customers and everybody, and in front of HR. And the thing is, she was looking for Tony to back her up. What could he have done? Because you could argue as him trying to save face and protect himself. But when you think about what I said earlier in regards to him lying to HR about showing favoritism, him doing anything in this situation would have been showing favoritism. And I know Leonard is like a rude. He's like Randall from Recess, if you remember that cartoon, one Saturday morning. Randall, a snitch and everything, slimeball. But what she did was uncalled for. I mean, I said it. He deserved for what he was insinuating and for snitching to HR, this, that, and the third. Yeah, he's lucky the coffee's all he got. But no, it's just what's right is right. And his argument is valid. Like, hey, she assaulted me with coffee. She deserves some consequences. If Tony tried to do anything using his VP power to help out Dany, that would have been a clear sign of showing favoritism. And then he would have gotten in trouble too. But the thing is, what could he have done? Folks, for those of you thinking Tony ought to get suspended, Tony should do something, Tony shouldn't have left Dany out to dry. Let me know what he could have said or done to get Dany out of this situation. You tell me. You tell me. Because she was the one that knocked the coffee. She was the one that knocked the coffee. It wasn't Tony that did it. It wasn't Leonard that did it. Dany did that. And the fact that she doesn't want to face the accountability. See, when Tony went over to Dany's, I got so frustrated because I guess Dany isn't high. She was meditating, but she was still acting all aloof and laughing. I'm like, this is the crap. And look, say what you will about Tony, but I appreciate the man knew his worth and just got up and left. Like, I'm not doing this halfway, I got 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out thing with you. Like, no, it's either you're all in or not. He's not like Preston is going to be like, forced to be restricted to Dany's moods. Basically, it reminds me of Barbershop 2 when I think Ricky was talking to that girl in the streets like, look, when we together, we together. And when we not, we not. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. So he left. He left that key and then left her. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I don't. So he just wants to have Dany face some sort of accountability for what you did. And it's like, look, I didn't leave you out to dry. You knocked the coffee in his face and you got to deal with the consequences of it. It's just like when this scene was as frustrating to watch as it was when Andy was over at Robin's hotel room and he's like, I just want the woman I love to take even a shred of accountability for the current situation she's in being the result of her own bad choices. F you, Robin. See, this is exact. And then if Dany wins this case, I'm just going to just facepalm like, how is she supposed to win this case? And Andy telling her like, hey, I'm not I'm not really like a workplace lawyer or anything like that, but essentially you do know that if you plan to sue the airline, it's probably going to impact Tony. And what did Dany say? Well, he didn't stand up for me, so I don't care. What the her winning this lawsuit, and I think I made this post as well. Oh yeah, I did. I said, if Dany wins by suing the airline, this is just as ridiculous as that female rapper suing Lyft because a driver basically said his car wasn't, big enough to support her. Do something else. It's just like Monique winning against Netflix. It's like, it's ridiculous. But hey, those are my thoughts on it. I think Dany and this whole storyline is full of crap. And I don't know. And then all the other people are like, yeah, he ought to get suspended for inappropriate behavior on the job and their relationship and all. First of all, Tony did nothing that was a situation where Dany didn't consent to it. That's one thing. So there was never a power disadvantage where Tony used his position to say, hey, Dany, I'm VP. Have sex with me or you're fired. That never happened. Now, were there plenty of inappropriate moments, both at Dany's kiosk and in Tony's office? Absolutely. However, people fail to mention how, they always say, look at all them times Tony started grinding on Dany at her, counter and everything. And, this, that, and the third. Yeah, that's true. But how about the one time Dany called out of work? I forgot if she said she was sick or just took the day off or whatever. I think she said she was sick. And she ended up coming to Tony's office in like that trench coat or whatever and was about to disrobe, showing she had nothing under there. And then that's when she met Tony's kids. Couldn't she face consequences for that? See, people love to pick and choose what they remember about these characters and what they do, but just because you don't like Tony, just because you don't like Rich, just because you don't like Jordan or Gary or Hayden or Karen or whoever else, like, don't let that allow you to pick and choose what you want to remember about the show, because guess what? I want to tell you the damn facts. But hey, that's all I got. Hey, I've spoken my piece, and like I said, it's going to be complete bull crap if Dany wins this case. And Yeah, this is ridiculous. So, yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.